Have you ever felt like an outsider, wondering if you'd ever truly fit in? Or maybe you've gone through hard times, uncertain if things would improve. If so, you're not alone. The story we're about to explore might be just what you need. Let's talk about Ruth, one of the most remarkable women in the Bible. Her story feels like a blockbuster film. It has heartbreak, love, bravery, and a surprise ending. Picture this. Israel is struggling through a severe shortage of food. Supplies are low, and it seems like people have forgotten about God. Right in the middle of this turmoil, we meet Ruth, a young woman from Moab who's about to take a life-changing journey. People are doing whatever they can to survive, and hope seems scarce. This is where Ruth's story begins. You might be thinking, why should I care about someone from so long ago? Well, buckle up, because Ruth's story shows how God can turn our worst situations into something wonderful. We're talking a total transformation from rags to riches, from being on the outside to becoming part of something bigger, and from hopelessness to building a lasting legacy. Ready to see how? To learn how a foreign widow rose to become one of the Bible's most significant figures, how her life can teach us about faith, love, and staying strong, stick around. We're about to unpack the amazing story of Ruth, and trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. Get ready to see how God works in mysterious ways, how one person's faithfulness can shape history, and how love can break down any barrier. This isn't a dull old tale. It's a story that will challenge you, inspire you, and maybe even shift how you look at your own life. So let's jump right in and find out why Ruth's story has fascinated people for centuries, and why it still matters to us now. Our journey starts in Moab, a nation that had both conflicts and family ties with Israel. The Moabites, descendants of Lot, often clashed with their Israelite neighbors. It's here we meet Ruth, likely raised to worship many gods. The Bible doesn't say much about her younger years, but we can guess her culture was very different from Israel's belief in one God. Then we meet Elimelech, a man from Bethlehem in Judah. He arrives in Moab with his wife Naomi and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, looking for food because of a severe famine back home. Times are tough, and leaving the promised land for a foreign place was risky. Eventually, Mahlon marries Ruth, and Chilion marries another Moabite named Orpah. We don't know exactly how Ruth and Mahlon met, but we can imagine the cultural hurdles they dealt with. During her marriage, Ruth must have heard about Israel's God. Later on, we learn just how much this shaped her faith. Tragedy then strikes. Elimelech dies, leaving Naomi alone in a strange land. Soon after, both Mahlon and Chilion pass away too, leaving Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah as widows. In that era, widows faced huge hardships, but being widowed in a foreign land was even more challenging. Ruth's whole life was thrown upside down, and her choices from here would change everything, even history itself. Overwhelmed by sorrow, the three widows, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, stand at a crossroads. With no husband or sons, Naomi decides to go back to Bethlehem after hearing God has brought food to her homeland again. Knowing how hard life could be, she encourages her daughters-in-law to return to their own families, saying, "May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me." Ruth 1:8. It's a moment that shows how close these women have become. Orpah, in tears, heads back to Moab. But Ruth refuses to leave Naomi. Naomi tries to persuade her, but Ruth clings to her and says words that still echo today. "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. Where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." Ruth 1:16-17. This powerful promise goes beyond family loyalty. It's also a declaration of Ruth's new faith. She's leaving behind her home, her gods, and all that's familiar to stick with Naomi and follow Israel's God. It's a bold decision, showing both Ruth's courage and her commitment. She knows she might be treated badly as a foreigner, yet her love for Naomi and her devotion to God drive her on. In those words, we see a reflection of God's own faithful love toward his people. With that, Ruth and Naomi begin their trip back to Bethlehem, carrying sorrow but also a small spark of hope. Neither of them has any idea that they're at the start of a remarkable story of rescue and renewal. They travel from Moab to Bethlehem, a journey of around 50 miles that likely took days on foot. Imagine them crossing rough terrain, vulnerable to danger, needing help from strangers for food and shelter. Naomi, older and weighed down by grief, probably relies on Ruth's support. Ruth, meanwhile, is stepping into a new world, guided by her decision to follow Israel's God. The Bible doesn't detail their journey, but we can guess they talked about Bethlehem, about Israel's traditions, and the faith Ruth had chosen. When they finally approach Bethlehem, the scenery shifts to greener hills. People notice Naomi's return, asking, "Can this be Naomi?" Ruth 1:19. Naomi, whose name means pleasant, tells them, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." Ruth 1:20. Her grief is laid bare. She left with a family and came back with none, except for Ruth by her side. For Ruth, this must have been intimidating. She's a Moabite entering a tight-knit community. Still, she remains steadfast. They arrive at the start of the barley harvest, which hints at God's hand at work. There could be food and jobs available. How will two widows get by? How will Ruth, a foreigner, be treated? The stage is set for what comes next, as the harvest begins and God's plan for Ruth and Naomi starts to unfold. With the fields turning golden for the barley harvest, Ruth decides to gather leftover grain to support herself and Naomi. God's law allowed the needy and foreigners to pick up what the harvesters left behind, and Ruth humbly sets out to do this. She says, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor." Ruth 2:2. These words show her humility and determination. By divine chance, or rather God's design, Ruth ends up in the fields of Boaz, a wealthy man from Naomi's late husband's clan. He arrives to greet his workers. "The Lord be with you." They reply, "The Lord bless you," which tells us Boaz is godly and respected. Boaz notices Ruth and asks about her. His foreman explains, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest." Ruth 2:6-7. Moved by her loyalty and work ethic, Boaz shows her unexpected kindness. He tells her to stay in his fields, guarantees her safety, and offers her water to drink. Stunned, Ruth bows and asks why he cares about a foreigner. Boaz responds, "All that you have done has been fully told to me. The Lord repay you for what you have done." Ruth 2:11-12. All day long, Boaz continues to be gracious. He invites Ruth to eat with the workers, even gives extra grain for her to gather. By evening, Ruth has an ephah of barley, an impressive amount. When she brings it home, Naomi realizes Boaz is a close relative, one of our redeemers. Ruth 2:20. Hope springs up for these two widows, who now see God's loving hand guiding events. This isn't just good luck, it's God putting the pieces together for something much bigger. Knowing Boaz is a close relative who might help them, Naomi starts thinking of Ruth's future security and happiness. She says to Ruth, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" Ruth 3:1. She tells Ruth to wash, put on perfume, dress in her best, and head to the threshing floor where Boaz is. She instructs Ruth to wait until Boaz has eaten and drunk, then notice where he lies down. Naomi tells her to uncover his feet and lie down, saying, "He will tell you what to do." Ruth 3:4. This move is risky. Ruth is a foreigner and could be misunderstood, but it also follows the idea of a kinsman redeemer who can marry a widow and preserve the family line. Ruth answers simply, "All that you say I will do." Ruth 3:5. Her trust in Naomi, and in God, is striking. She's no longer just gathering leftovers, she's taking a daring step to secure a future for herself and Naomi. It's a leap of faith, guided by the customs of Israel and by Naomi's wise counsel. We can imagine Ruth feeling both fear and hope as she prepares for this night. Naomi's plan will soon lead to a nighttime meeting that tests Ruth's bravery and reveals Boaz's integrity, all under God's watchful care. As evening settles over Bethlehem, Ruth heads to the threshing floor. After the harvest celebration, Boaz lies down near the grain. Once he's asleep, Ruth quietly approaches, uncovers his feet, and lies down. To us, this may seem strange, but back then, It was a way to show a request for marriage and redemption. Later that night, Boaz wakes up in surprise to find a woman at his feet. "Who are you?" he asks. Ruth answers, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." Ruth 3:9. She's basically proposing marriage by invoking his duty as kinsman redeemer. Boaz replies, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman." Ruth 3:10-11. Boaz, a man of honor, promises to settle it the next day, but he also explains there's another relative with a stronger claim. Before Ruth leaves, he gives her 6 measures of barley, so she won't return to Naomi empty-handed. Ruth returns to Naomi at sunrise, full of hope and uncertainty. Naomi advises her, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." Ruth 3:18. Now everything depends on what Boaz does. Early in the morning, Boaz heads to the town gate, the place where legal business happens. He finds the closer relative, gathers witnesses, and presents the case. Boaz first brings up the sale of Naomi's land. The man is willing at first, until Boaz mentions Ruth the Moabite. Realizing this could complicate his own estate, the man steps aside. Boaz eagerly announces in front of everyone, "Today you are witnesses. I have bought all that belonged to Elimelech, also Ruth the Moabite. I have bought to be my wife, so that the name of the dead may not be cut off." Ruth 4:9-10. The elders and onlookers bless Boaz and Ruth, saying, "May the Lord make the woman like Rachel and Leah. May you act worthily, and be renowned in Bethlehem." Ruth 4:11-12. So Boaz and Ruth marry, and their union is a shining example of God's loving plan. Boaz redeems Ruth much like Jesus later redeems us. Their wedding is likely a joyful celebration, with the townspeople praising God for blessing them. They name him Obed, and here's the big twist. Obed becomes the grandfather of King David, making Ruth an ancestor of the Messiah. By following God, a foreign widow ends up in the very lineage of Jesus. This story shows that faith can transform even the darkest situation into something amazing. Ruth's journey holds powerful lessons for us. Her loyalty to Naomi shows the impact of staying committed. Her words, "Where you go, I will go. Your God, my God." Ruth 1:16, challenge us to stand by the people we love and stand by God no matter what. She also teaches us that faith involves taking action. Instead of waiting around, Ruth went out to gather grain. Because of her hard work, she caught Boaz's eye, and we're reminded that faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. James 2:17. Her story beautifully illustrates redemption, with Boaz as her kinsman redeemer, a picture of how God rescues us. Ephesians 1:7 says, "In him we have redemption through his blood," reminding us of the ultimate rescue we have in Christ. Finally, Ruth's presence in Christ's family tree shows God's heart for every nation. Galatians 3:28 tells us we are all one in Christ Jesus. Ruth's story proves that anyone who trusts God can be part of his grand plan. Although short, Ruth's story plays a vital role in biblical history. It happened when Israel had no king and people did whatever they wanted. In that dark time, Ruth's faith shines. Matthew's gospel includes her name among the women mentioned in Jesus' genealogy, highlighting God's mercy and how he works through outsiders. Ruth is the bridge from the turbulent days of the judges to the rise of King David. The book of Ruth also shines a light on the concept of the kinsman redeemer. It's a direct link to Jesus, who redeems us in the fullest sense. Ephesians 1:7 calls it the riches of God's grace. We also see God's care throughout the story, from Ruth's chance meeting with Boaz to their wedding, to the birth of Obed. It's a reminder that God's hand is always guiding our steps, even when we can't see it. Ruth's thread in the Bible's tapestry may look small, but it ties together major themes of God's work. 1 Corinthians 1:27 notes how God uses the seemingly small or weak to fulfill his big plans. Her life shows that anyone's story, no matter how humble, can be woven into God's design. Ruth challenges us to believe that our faithfulness can make waves we never see. In the end, Ruth's tale is a reminder of how faithful God is, how powerful his love can be, and how he's always at work behind the scenes. May her example move us to trust God more, love more, and look for how our own stories might fit into his sweeping story of salvation.